There we go. A few more people coming in here. Thanks everyone who's just joined us. We appreciate it.
Sorry, it was a little late. I had to update Zoom.
Don't you hate when that happens, Steve?
Of course, especially when you're running late.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
It's my honor. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Steve.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going great here in South Florida.
It's not bad here in Ventura. Other than our customers tend to be on the East Coast and they wake me up at early in the morning.
Yes. Or
And
they
when
call
they
late
want to
for
buy stuff, you kind of take the phone call.
yes.
uh,
How cold did it get there?
actually, Central Florida, 25 degrees here in South Florida in the low 40s.
Wow.
In Atlanta, 15.
Oh, wow.
I was up in Atlantic City, so they didn't get a lot of snow, but it was cold for this desert boy.
Yeah, it was cold up there, that's for sure.
Well, Sunday morning in Nashville, the wind chill was -4.
Wow.
How
Actually,
much power did you lose? The power's
Thankfully,
down.
my wife and I never lost power. But Nashville proper, Nashville Metro, at one point, basically 50% of the city was without power.
wow.
Hey,
And they
Dewey,
don't winterize pools there, do they?
Some, yeah, some
some.
were, some weren't.
We
Dewey,
have
my
at
son,
least one customer who's depending on variable speed pump freeze protections to protect the equipment, and I was like, don't do it. This was like a year ago, and they're outside of Nashville. I haven't heard.
Not at 0 degrees, that's for sure.
Mm-mm. And no power.
No, no.
I was like, oh no, we got Texas all over again.
Yes. I
hey,
think we're gonna
Dewey.
go ahead and go ahead.
Yep. No,
Finish
I
that
was just going to
Jen.
say, hey, Dewey, hi.
Hey,
Um,
Jim.
good to see you. My son's up at Belmont, in school there. He didn't have power for 3 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a
We
long time.
we still have several thousand folks, if not 10 to 12, that they're still without power, won't have power until next week.
Wow, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
A lot of these old, beautiful trees, man, they're gone.
I get it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Thank you. I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. If everybody could mute themselves right now, just so the person that will be doing the short little presentation will be able to speak and not have background noise. That would be wonderful. Like I said, we're going to do about a 40-minute presentation. At the end of that, we'll open it up for questions and discussion if you have that. If you need to leave at any time, don't worry about that. We are recording this. I'm happy to share the recording with those of you who have registered. You may feel like there's somebody who was left out of this meeting or was not invited. That was not intentional in any way. It was really for us, Dewey and I sat down with a list of people that really can make an impact in commercial public pool safety. And this is the list that I came up with. We'll have some discussion about those other things as we move forward. But again, thank you so much for coming because I know how busy you guys are. And I appreciate even, a half an hour, 40 minutes of your time. I really appreciate it. My role at CMAC is to help as I'm an advocate for them and to try to help them be more sustainable or be able to, do what they need to do because I really have a heart and passion for what they do and think it's so important for us. So that's really my role here. And that's why I came up with this meeting and decided to do it. So again, thank you so much for coming. Today, as you know, it's no surprise here. I sent this in the email to all of you that Thomas Lachaki, who I call, is a mentor of mine and I certainly would call a friend, who I worked with him at the time that this idea of the Model Aquatic Health Code came up. And I really wanted to come on here as really a visionary and somebody that I look up to very much so. And I just think he inspires me and inspired me way back all those years ago when this concept came up and really thought he should be on here. And of course, you can't say enough about Michael Beach. We appreciate you, Michael, for everything you have done and will do. And certainly as part of the board of directors for CMAC, we appreciate that. And then Dewey is really the future part of the future of CMAC and all of that, because he's doing all of these wonderful things and helping and educating and doing tech calls and all of these things that he'll talk about during his part of the presentation. And I'm not sure everybody's aware exactly what he's doing. So I want to make sure that he is able to express that. So that's what we're going to do. Again, we're going to have Tom speak for a few minutes, and then Michael, and then Dewey, and then I'll speak for a few minutes. And then again, we're going to open this up. Because you've taken the time to come here today, we really want you to be a part of this discussion. And if there's ways for us to partner together and decide we're going to, hold a meeting every quarter or get together as a group and decide how we can really make a difference in aquatic safety, that's what we want to talk about at the end. Like I said, if you have to leave, I certainly understand, and we will let you have access to the recording. I will follow up with every single person that is registered for this call. I will follow up with you afterwards. And I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence here. Everybody knows we had a few slides that had stuff about crypto and things like that. And all of you here are already aware of all of those things. I didn't want to, try to act like we were trying to educate you on what the issues are in public pool safety. You're very much aware of what they are. We know in this industry how important that is for us, for people to be able to go out and enjoy aquatic facilities and the water, and to get in the water and to be healthier. Healthy pools, healthy bodies was a phrase that Tom put together way back in the day. And it's still relevant today, even more so maybe with the way that, children sometimes aren't getting enough exercise and things like that. A way for us to get active and join together as a family and be able to have that time. It's so important. And I have such a passion for that. So that is really what this is about. As we know, it's not just, there are people out there doing the swim lessons. There are people out there doing education for pool operators and facility managers. That is happening right now for sure. But is there a united voice? Is there a united group of people that are getting together and actually having conversations about public pool safety? I don't think that's happening in the industry right now. And we're supporting a large variety of people that really need these services, and they need the pools to be healthy. They need the pools to be safe. We want to prevent bad things from happening, because that bad PR and that bad press, when something bad happens, blows up everywhere on the internet and on YouTube and everywhere else. That's the kind of stuff we're trying to minimize. We're trying to, make not happen. As we know, people get sick, people get injured, but really, to me, this third point on this slide, trust is lost. Like I said before, when bad things happen, people start seeing aquatic facilities as not safe. And, right now in the world today, I don't think most people trust anybody anymore. You can't trust what you see on the internet. You can't trust what, news or whatever it is that we're having issues with. We need to have our product, the one that we represent out there, that actually does good for people and builds communities and helps people get healthier. All of that, we want that product to be the best it can possibly be. And we want it to be trusted. We want people to feel safe when they get in the water. That is important to us. When this started way back in the day, obviously the other codes, restaurants, food codes, and drinking water, and all of those things were already well established. What we didn't have was a code that was a model code for public pools that could be adopted either in part or in whole by a public health in the different states to be able to utilize this. That was something that I remember the discussions way back then when Tom was talking about this. And I want him to kind of, talk about those thoughts that he was having at the time, because I feel I was inspired at the time. And I'm hoping that you guys will kind of remember that. Those of you that were still here or around at that time and in the industry and remember those days, you'll feel a bit inspired and nostalgic about what the reasoning was and why it still matters today and is still so important today. Everything was fragmented. Tom's going to talk about this, but you really cannot start the conversation about the Model Aquatic Health Code without Dr. Lachaki, because, again, he was the one at the National Swimming Pool Foundation all those years ago that was starting the conversation with the CDC and other leaders in the industry to say, hey, we need a model code. What we have right now is not good enough. We need something that's going to help us all to have safer aquatic facilities. And again, healthy pools, healthy bodies was something Tom coined back in the day. And we even had a hot water, healthy living, all of these things that he put together that were on the health side of things. I really wanted Tom to come on today and talk about that, because I was inspired, and I hope you are today as well. Tom, I don't know if you're still on mute, but you can come off mute if you please. I would love it if you could just walk us through what you were thinking at the time and what you have for us today. That would be great.
I'd be happy to, Michelle. And maybe you could write my eulogy one day. One of the most beautiful ones I've heard. Thank you. Um, the body of evidence pointing out the importance of relationships on our own personal public health, but also on our longevity is really growing. And I just want to thank the leaders that are sitting in today for your leadership in the pool, hot tub, and aquatic industry. I believe this industry plays a critical role in helping families and friends live happier, healthier lives and build those relationships. Those of you who know me know that when I served as the CEO of the Swimming Pool Foundation for 15 years, we invested in promoting the benefits of pools, hot tubs, and aquatic activity. We funded research, disseminated information about the benefits of being in, on, and around the water. We did that through the World Aquatic Health Conference, through scholarly journals, collaborations with many universities and organizations and companies like many of those that are listening in today. Prior to that role, just so you know a little bit of where my background comes from, I was the director of product development at Biolab from 1994 to 2003. And during that time, I was very active in the National Trade Association at the time. I was a member and then chaired the Recreational Water Quality Committee for a little over 5 years. I was a member of the Technical Committee, Public Pool Standard Committee that actually worked on the Trade Association standards, as well as the glossary committee. I'm a big advocate supporter for industry in general, and this industry in particular. Since 2019, I've coached executives and chaired a Colorado Springs business owner executive peer group. I'm a big advocate for business. I'm not on the MAC board. I have friends in the industry, and I'm so happy to see so many of them on the call today, but I have no financial interest in this industry, nor with any organizations that regulate this industry. So let me start with a bit of the history that Michelle was kind of queuing up. The Pool and Spa Trade Association started developing standards in the late 1950s, and they published their first one in 1961. Those standards were updated and improved maybe a dozen times plus in the last 65 years. The trade association standards were strengthened in the 80s when they received the ANSI designation, the American National Standards Institute designation. And later with the ICC partnership a little over 10 years ago and the International Code Council, or ICC, their building codes adopted in almost all states. So the question then that was going on in our mind back then, as well as when the MAC started, as well as today, is why are there still several hundred and possibly close to 2,000 local environmental health codes? Why are there still hundreds, if not thousands, of local environmental health codes in the US? Well, I think we could all come to an easy agreement that having hundreds of different codes in every jurisdiction is bad for business. It's also bad for families. Now, the reason why there are so many codes is actually really pretty simple. The mission of a trade association and the associated nonprofits and their associated nonprofits can conflict with the mission of the environmental health groups or government departments. The association's mission is to benefit their business members, and that's a great mission, and I think that's what all trade associations should be doing. However, in contrast, the government's primary mission is to protect the citizens and their families. Now, if you doubt that there's a difference in the missions and that they can conflict, there's a profound example in this industry. In the 1990s, the trade association standards failed to show, quote unquote, the duty of care in the Manili case. The trade association lost that case, went bankrupt, was forced to sell the National Trade Show, which today we know as the International Pool and Spa Expo. Okay, now I recognize that that case involved the trade association's residential standards, and we're discussing how to help with public pool standards. However, this case illustrates that different missions really matter. The difference between the mission is that after 65 years, there's still hundreds, if not thousands, of local environmental health codes. It's not good for business if we keep doing the same thing and think that we'll get a different result. And that was a big impetus for moving forward to be able to create a model aquatic health code. The strategic conflict between business mission and government mission has resulted in hundreds, if not thousands, of codes. And that's despite the trade association's updates that are notable and actually very good over the last 65 years. However, it's bad for business and bad for families. And how many decades do we have to pass before we affirm that the current approach doesn't work? We needed a different approach. That was true when the Model Aquatic Health Code started. It's true today. And sadly, it'll be true 65 years from now. To move the world in the direction that we have fewer codes that make sense, we need to do four things. The first, we need a model code that's owned and administered by an independent nonprofit that's not associated with a trade association. In this case, it's the Council for the Model Aquatic Health Code. The second thing that was needed, and you'll hear more from Michael Beach on this later. In this case, it's the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This is a similar model that's worked for how the food code, the National Food Code, has been managed. Third, the model code has to have an annex that provides the rationale for each requirement within the model code. This makes adoption easier and code updates easier. If something's not right in the code, provide the evidence, update the annex, and change the code. And no other code has an annex like the current Model Aquatic Health Code. The heavy lifting's already been done. There's already about over 350 pages in the annex with the information that justifies the current information that's in the code. Number 4, the code must have broad engagement from all key stakeholders. The current board is broadly represented. To the folks in industry, the CMAHC board chair, Kevin Post, is a highly respected industry guy and someone who I personally have tremendous respect for. And in addition to that, the Model Aquatic Health Code and Annex are available for free to make their influence of local codes even easier for health departments. The Model Aquatic Health Code satisfies all 4 of these criteria. Supporting is a way to have greater adoption, greater code consistency, easier code updates that make sense. It's good for business. It's good for families. So with that, Michelle, I'll turn control of the meeting back to you, and you could transition to the next speaker. And if there are questions later, I'd be happy to address those.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate that. That brings me back. It brings me back, Tom. I remember you certainly can't have a conversation as well about the Model Aquatic Health Code and CMAHC for that matter without Dr. Beach. I've known him for a long time because he was around back in the day when we started these conversations at NSPF. And so I've known Michael for a long time, have a lot of respect for him. We just had a call. Just a quick story. We had a call on Monday. We have a Monday morning call or afternoon call for CMAHC. And this past Monday, a week ago, he just inspired me. Just having regular conversation in a meeting, I was so inspired by Michael and the things that he was saying. And I hope you'll feel that inspiration today because it's something that we need in this industry. Sometimes we just go along and do the same old thing, go to the same old shows, the same old meetings and everything. But I feel like when we have leaders in the industry who inspire us to do things differently or to do things better or to make us want to do something, I think that's so important. I think Michael is one of those people. So Michael, thanks so much. I appreciate you and love to hear what you have to say. And you're on mute.
Isn't that the term for the ages here? You're on mute. So again, thanks everyone for being here today. I really, as I said earlier, for some of you hadn't entered yet, but really great to see names that I recognize, his face that I recognize, and have been on some of this journey with us. And Tom really, I think, laid a great foundation to think about how we got here. And before I start going through, and you can, uh, before I start going through, I want us to understand at least how I view the Mac at this point in time. And I think we're at, 2014 release. We're in 2026, for goodness sake, time flies. And the term is out there now, and we didn't necessarily use it when this first started because it didn't really exist. But the term is influencer. And how the thought at the beginning was, how can public health take a more active role in influencing how state and local industry and everything think about the public health related aquatic issues in treated recreational venues. That was the core. And again, we'll just go to the next slide. But I mean, we know what the milieu was. And, I remember in 95 or something, I think I saw Rick Root here. The first talk I gave on kind of crypto and other things, it was not very well attended. I got some feedback that I was fear mongering and all that. Boy, the next year when there was a national level outbreak, it was standing room only. And I was asked to actually, can you do this again in another hour? We'll find a room. And so it changed the thinking about how we move forward. And this was just one aspect of what goes on. All of that led to the MAC and basically having data saying we can do better. And we can engage people in a direction that will improve public health. And so lots of outbreaks, lots of cases, thousands of cases per venue in some of these instances that really sounded the alarm that we really need to rethink how we're doing things. And I think underscored for Tom and I that we have to update regularly, and we have to update based on the data, and we need to find technologies that work. And that's really a problem with environmental health locations because, some of them 20 years since we redid our code, 25 years, and it is an incredibly big task for them to do that. And so what we said is, give them a model, give them something else that is written that they can pull from and can influence the upgrades and make it easier to try and get over that hurdle. Next slide. And again, most of this is presentable. As Michelle said, we're not trying to educate here, but this, for me, started out with recreational water illnesses. It clearly was focused around crypto, but I remember walking and talking to management and saying, this makes no sense to come at this industry with a single focused idea around this one pathogen. What we needed was an all-encompassing something, that model code, that would actually include everything and cover all the issues, because that's the only way that we're going to really protect health and safety long term. And so we started to pull in people from all sorts of other areas and, chemical injuries. And then we were getting reports of these outbreaks, due to indoor air quality. All of that was emerging as issues that said we have to have public health fixes. And so how could we influence that? Next slide. And so, most of these, when we looked at the data, and that's one thing CDC does well, is it tracks data. And it was understanding that most of these, if you look at root cause, when we could get those data, were preventable sorts of things. We know that it can be done. And so that kind of emboldened us to keep on moving to the next slide. And, thinking about Charles Otto worked at CDC that time. He had worked on multiple versions of the food code. Again, FDA owns the food code. They are regulatory, so it's a little bit different situation. But what we said is, why can't we do something similar? And bring this code. And again, because there's no real federal guidance, VGB aside and that, but there's no real federal oversight in a more global scale as there is with the food code because of FDA's role, because there is no federal jurisdiction over treated venues. EPA talks about the beaches and so on. And so could we model it after that? And clearly there was a nonprofit, Conference for Food Protection, that was created to kind of manage things. That's why, we created the CMAHC to basically stand as that bulwark that would help influence, update, and help CDC kind of keep this on track. And so I think, and the annex was, frankly, it was one of those things I used to explain to people that I was a really recalcitrant child. I always argued if you didn't tell me why I had to do something, and it's been a burden through life because I'm argumentative when things come, when I don't know why you're telling me that I must do something. And I said, the annex is where we should tell people why they need to do this. Give them the data, give them the reasons, and let's move on from there. And so that's why, at CDC, Charles and I kind of teamed up to say, let's move forward and go to the next slide. And so, the thought at that time, as we talked with Tom, was there at that initial 2005 meeting where we talked about it. And the MAC, what became the MAC, was the major recommendation that came out of that industry, state, local, federal meeting and everything, but was keep it current. That the problem now, and we heard, this in other states updating, it's been since the 90s since they updated, but it needs to be current. So keep it going. It needs to be widely adopted. And Tom really said it beautifully, which is, why is it we have 30-year-old codes out there that haven't kept up with anything? And there's an inertia there because of the amount of work. So how can we, basically move that forward and push that? And then, that it understands and it influences. That was the key, is that can we use the data and can we use these fixes to do something all encompassing? And that will start to move the ship. And I do think that many of you will remember when, who was talking about secondary disinfection in high risk venues? That kind of started with this, and crypto drove a lot of it, sequestering circulation systems so we don't put the kiddie pool in with the adult pools within 30 minutes sort of thing. There's a whole list of changes like that were driven, that were data driven, that said we can change things, we can fix some of this if we change practice in the industry. And so, and again, I think, the influencer is what we were intending there, is to kind of move this into multiple venues and really move the industry the commercial standards that were out there, move them forward as well. And I think I saw Steve Barnes was on here. We've had many discussions about harmonization and all that, but in the end, this wasn't, it didn't need to be adversarial versus complementary, and with things moving forward, and thinking about how do we solve these infectious disease, injury, chemical related issues. And so that's kind of where it went. Next slide. And so, where are we now? We're not where we need to be. That's why we're here today. That we've influenced 30 states and locals, the kind of national, the US military, YMCA, other organizations that see an importance in having a more uniform standard that crosses state lines. That's why we make standards, whether it's, the MAC, PHTA, IAPMO, or so on. But it's, again, these are evidence of influence. And I think it's, as Tom mentioned, it's this moniker, if it's backed by CDC, the public health agency, that basically says we've kind of gone through this, we've put in data, that so on, and we think this is the way to move things forward. And so if this moves PHTA 2 to be primarily chapter 5 of operations and maintenance, I remember people saying, oh my God, look what happened. And it's like, let's all clap. This is what the intention was. We've influenced. And so this was meant to be free for anybody and everybody to grab what they could to make improvements in aquatics. So, and try to unify things. And I think, and I think over the last 11 years, we've seen a lot more of that. It's moved forward doesn't mean there isn't a lot more to do, or we'd just pack up our bags and everything would be perfect. But I think it's raised the standards. And, especially if you start to look at some of the construction things we all know about now, operations and maintenance, but policies and management, you know, getting the lifeguarding groups across the country to pull together to talk about uniform training and guidance was a huge issue when this first started. Now we're doing it in concert. And I think that's a real important thing to see how this influence has happened. Go ahead. And so this is a critical moment. And I don't need to really stress all of this, except a few details here. CDC, owner of the MAC, certainly is, its appendage is CMAC out there influencing, getting input, and so on. Is that what we want is more identification, continual identification of public health issues that need to be addressed. That's what's been coming from a CDC CMAC side to try and move things forward. But there's been a lot of change. CDC is under real duress right now with, potential 25% staff reduction, 33% budget cut. That says that they've had to make decisions, which frankly, the MAC is not their top priority. And I don't think anybody would fault them for that. All MAC support now. So as I talk to people inside, I'm up there every Tuesday afternoon, essentially waving a banner saying we support CDC, both to support the employees and getting honks from people driving by because I believe in the organization. But that's every Tuesday. And, what they say is that we've had to make some tough choices because of all these budget cuts and everything. So they can no longer support the MAC the same way but we do support having the MAC. What they've done is consolidated. So instead of two groups where, I was one of them and Charles Otto was the other, there's one group that will oversee the MAC and everything. As I talked to them in the past week, yes, we still support it, but, we don't know what's going to happen from a finance standpoint and everything. And so, it values it, it promotes it, it sees that it has made progress, which is what the initial intent with. But we have to basically take this duality, MAC, CMAC, and continue it, especially as we look at the near term to move forward and everything. And so I think sustainability is clearly Michelle's focus, all of our focus. Our focus in this meeting and talking to you is we believe that the MAC and CMAC have made substantive improvements in health and safety in the aquatics industry over the past couple of, well, we'll say since 2014. But 2007, really, when Tom, and we first started pulling work groups together to create the MAC. But we believe that it has made substantive improvements by influence, by adoption, by pieces, parts, by consultation, by presentation, etc. But we need to be sustainable. We need to watch out for this while CDC is kind of under duress here. And so that's what we're looking to you for, is that we hope that you see the importance of this, that you see the influence of this, that you see how we have worked with other groups to move this forward. And I think getting us to think in terms of where do we want to be in 10 years, 20 years, or as Tom said, another 65 years. I won't be around then. But I would like to believe that we will have made improvements in things. And many of those 20-year-old codes will be updated as we move forward. And I think that that's a lofty goal. And if you think about, well, what's it doing? We'll hear from Dewey in just a moment. But what happened when surf pools came up, when isolation pools came up, when sound issues came up for indoor natatoriums, cold plunges, which are currently being worked on. Those were identified from a public health standpoint, basically because environmental health trusts CDC, trusts the CMAC to come and say, oh my God, these new venues are coming and we have nothing in code that can help us understand how to regulate them and help us. And so that's been a role the CMAC has played, is to pull together those committees. And we'd certainly like to move forward where maybe there's one committee and we don't have to have PHTA doing one and CMAC doing one. We work as, as partners here, and that how do we continue that development so that we keep up with environmental health needs for health and safety at aquatic facilities. And that, I think, is the critical question for us at this meeting today. And I've just run out of time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. I think it's important to see, at the CDC level and at that government level, what's happening and how important it still is. I love the fact that you're out there, Michael, with waving a flag every Tuesday. If I were in the area, I'd join you, but I'm not. But that's thanks for just being someone who has always stood by it, who always understood how important it was, and has always been, forthright in the conversation about that. I really appreciate that. So thanks again, and thanks for being on the board too, to still represent, even though you're retired, to still be a part of it is important for all of us, I believe.
I'd just like to say it's
Yeah.
because I believe in this. And I
Yes.
believe that it will make the difference that we all hoped for when this first started.
Yes.
Thanks.
I agree. That's how I feel too. And then we want to bring Dewey on as well. Dewey, to me, is kind of the future of CMAC and the Model Aquatic Health Code. He's been around for quite a while, but maybe you may or may not know him. And I just wanted to make sure that he's expressing what we're really doing right now, because I'm not sure everyone is aware. Everybody just thinks that the CMAC sits back and waits for the next vote on the code or the next revision of the Model Aquatic Health Code, and that's absolutely not true. There's so many things that Dewey and the team are doing at CMAC right now, and I want to make sure everybody is aware of that. So Dewey, can you just give us an update? That would be great. Just let me know when you want me to bring the slide forward.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead and move on to the next slide. I
Okay.
think everyone here is pretty much familiar with me, either through direct relationships or indirect knowledge. Some of you, like Jim, we've talked extensively on things, but first time seeing your face, so welcome. Um, one thing, and I want to be very clear, right? Um, I obviously get around. I'm a face. I'm out there. I'm very active. I can't do what I do without our staff, our board, our volunteers. We have supporters on here that have been longtime supporters that I can't do this, what I do without y'all. Can't do this without our ambassadors, right? So yeah, I may be in a lot of ways the face of this thing and our efforts going forward in our service. But the true answer is I rely on our ambassadors. I rely on, the technical experts that have much more knowledge than I do. This truly is a group effort in what we do, right? So basically, in a nutshell, right, what we do, we're stewards of the MAC, right? We work for advocacy, we work for promotion, we work for education, we do many, many things that advance this thing, right? And it even goes further than just the MAC. Many of you are aware of commercial aquatics, institutional aquatics are kind of this thing that's out there, right? That's almost a hodgepodge. One of our visions is, in addition to supporting public health, in addition to being this entity, this agency that advocates and promotes and updates the MAC, right? We're also definitely trying to fill gaps in this institutional and commercial industry, right? Because that's our wheelhouse. That's where our experts work. That's where I work. That's where the MAC is focused on. So we've definitely been working to do some of that. Next slide, please. So what do we do, right? So one, we obviously manage the update process for CDC. That was the original intention of CMAC in our original charter, right? That's our big call to action, which it's even more important now that we're this MAC advocate with the issues going on at CDC that hopefully will be resolved in the very near future. we have to be the ones that are carrying the standard. We're the flag bearer to advocate for the MAC, to explain the MAC in many, many ways, right? And support those states that are, and municipalities and other AHJs that are advocating and adopting the MAC. So we help the vote on the code, the update process. We work with health departments across the country. I do a vast number of technical supports. I say vast. I do a lot of technical supports on a regular basis, and I really should keep up with them more because it's almost just like my daily job, right? So I open my inbox. I have 3, 4 technical requests, 3 or 4 questions every day almost from health agencies, from other entities. Some of you have called me on the fly when I'm at one of my pools, a water park I manage, wherever, out walking the dog this morning, where I get a phone call and it's just my natural inclination, right? I don't even really know how many of these things I do. It's a daily process where I and we support individuals in understanding the MAC, but even more importantly, understanding what is healthy swimming and understanding how do we operate our pools, design our pools, and build our pools better, right? That's what I do and what we do. And a lot of this is through the AHJs, the local health departments. We look at scientific review. We're currently kind of log jammed on that because we have the indoor air quality study that we, are working to move forward. But we work on scientific review. We work on data. We work on what needs to be addressed. What are our knowledge gaps, right? What research can we work on? And we don't really advertise a lot of this, right? One of the big studies we're doing now is on Legionella in hot tubs. They're primarily residentially based hot tubs, but they're in a commercial setting, right? They're in a resort setting. And the data coming out of that is astounding, right? And that's the kind of thing we do. We educate, our various stakeholders, which is our daily operators, our health officials, right? It's y'all, it's me. I learn as much from individuals like Michael and Tom and our various ambassadors, right, and our design experts, right, our operational experts. I get as much out of that as everyone else, and it's amazing, right? And we work to keep everything relevant, right? We work to keep the MAC as modern and forward thinking and current and data based and science based as possible. One of the projects we're working on now with an ad hoc committee, we're early into it, is we're talking about water reclamation and reuse, right? Because we know in vast parts of the country, we're in a water crisis. We know that stewardship, environmental stewardship, is something that we're going to have to address. And we have all this water that's being used in backwashing of pools, right? So we're not thinking about tomorrow. We're not thinking about next year. We're thinking about the next decade. We're thinking about what happens with these future ongoing climatological issues, right, that will have to be addressed. And getting these processes down to where our AHJs, our pools, right, regulatory environments, federal government, the CDC, has data, practices, and expert-driven information to where when the time comes, it's ready to go, right? And it's not a lost thing. Next slide, please. So, the big thing is the MAC is free. That's a CDC thing. Wholeheartedly support it. The MAC being a free code to that level it is just an amazing, amazing thing. It's accessible for everyone. The influence is absolutely undeniable. Maintaining it definitely comes with a cost, right? Comes with a cost from staff and time and financial resources at CDC, right? And before we move on, I want to make a very important thing about what it takes to sustain the MAC, right? Yes, we have our staff that has to happen. Yes, we have our infrastructure and supporting information and websites and, our even down to our Outlook accounts and our SharePoint accounts where we have massive amounts of information. We have our experts from across all walks in this industry, right? And it's been an amazing thing. Um, we also, we need funding, right? And that's going to be a call to action that Michelle will have very soon. Um, you know, Another reason to support us, one thing I didn't mention is products, right? When we consult with AHJs, I've done several of those over the last couple of months where we are having new products come out left and right. We're having major advancements in filtration that are hitting the market. We're having European DIN standard level equipment, right? That's being proposed and adopted and used. We're having novel approaches like chlorine dioxide in chloramine control, right? And HJs don't know where to go, right? They have no way to really have access to this information. We do. We do through our experts, we do through the MAC, we do through CDC, and the research has been done for decades, going back to Michael's work. Michael, I referenced the work that you and Murphy and Vince did on chlorine dioxide back in 2014. I've referenced that twice in the last 2 months, right? So that's what we do is we provide that guidance that these folks would be lost and they would defer just to not allow it, right? So that's another key thing that we do in our role with health departments, right? And before Michelle makes her call to action, you're all here for a reason. You're not random. This was not some random meeting. You're here because we respect you. You're here because every one of you are leaders. You have stepped up in this thing called aquatics. You have stepped up in this thing called public safety and health, right? Public health. You have stepped up in this thing called healthy swimming. You're on this journey with us, right? Already. You're here because you align with us. You're here because we believe in your products. We believe in your entities, your agencies, right? We, throwing Lindsay Mondick with the YMCA under the bus, right? Lindsay, 2,900 to 3,000 YMCAs across the country, the largest single operator of pools, is heavily referencing the MAC and their standards and their guidelines, right? That's a massive impact. You're here because you're already advocates and guardians and promoters of this thing called public health and this thing called aquatics. And you're here because, guess what? You're also purists. Yes, you have products you want to sell. Yes, you have, income lines you want to meet and revenue goals. But guess what? Every one of you, that's secondary. Your primary goal while you get into this, while you do this with your products, with your business, is because you care. So when Michelle hits her call to action very shortly, right? Just remember, you're already with us.
Yeah.
You're already our advocates. You're already guardians of public health. We're already walking down this thing. You're seeing the same issues we see. You're seeing the same concerns we see. You're seeing the same disconnect between institutional and commercial aquatics and the rest of the industry, right? So when she makes our call to action, join us, join me, help me have the resources I need from whether it's financial, whether it's your brain power, your expertise, your knowledge. Help us, help our ambassadors, help our public health entities, right? Help our AHJs. Join us on our journey. Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I love that, Dewey. Thank you. He makes my job really easy. He makes it really easy for me here. I know that, we don't want this to be just another financial ask. That's not the point of this entire presentation. The point of this and the reason I wanted to do this is because I want, like just like Dewey said, we want partners, we want ambassadors, we want people who want to join with us. And we can figure out what way that makes sense. If you cannot either support us via a sponsorship or a donation, is there a way that we can partner together on education or some other way that we can work together to make this happen? Because I think it is so important, as you've heard today, that the Model Aquatic Health Code stay, that it's updated, that it's free, that it's available for everyone. And we cannot do that without somebody managing that process, with somebody taking and reviewing that and making sure that everything is going correct. We have to have the Model Aquatic Health Code and we have to have CMAHC. If we want to be like stewards of public pool safety, this is how we're going to have to do that in this way. But we have a bigger vision than just the Model Aquatic Health Code. As Dewey was mentioning, we have a bigger vision of how we can systemize all those technical calls, how we can get back to having an environmental health leaders meeting, how we get back to what we originally did at the World Aquatic Health Conference all those years ago, where we had, gosh, 100 or more health officials coming and meeting and having a closed meeting where we talked about the issues and we could all help each other. We want to get back to all of that. And that is what we're hoping basically this organization can be, this company can be, this leader can be. And we want you involved in that. So if there's anybody that would like to come off mute, if you have any discussion of, this is something that Michael talked about a little bit ago, was kind of our emerging challenges that we have. So it's not just about being able to support the infrastructure of CMAHC, it's what do we have coming up with the climate and shifts. And he talked about emerging venues, which I think is so important. Thank you for bringing that up, Michael, before. These are the things that are going to be something for the industry that we're going to have to all deal with together as a team. How are we going to do all of that if we don't have somebody organizing that? If we don't have somebody leading that charge? And we want you behind that. We want you to join us to do that. If there's anybody, like I said, that wants to come off mute and have a question, have a discussion point, have a comment, anything like that, we would love to hear it. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, I'd like to speak up for a minute, Michelle. I mean, as you all know, I'm still sort of a newcomer to the pool industry. I'm about 8 years in now. I guess in 10 years, I get to say I get a veteran's badge. But when I came in, I came from completely different industries, building materials, chemicals, so forth. And I was searching when I came into the business for sort of a North Star as to how to think about our products, right? And then how to position them and how they're going to run and how we should be running this company and how we should be taking those products to market and messaging on those products. And to this day, I'll hand it to you. Model Aquatic Health Code is still the only, I would say, unfettered sort of source of truth out there. And I personally appreciate it. Everybody in my organization appreciates it, and our training references it regularly and vocally when we're out there trying to get the message out there. There's still kind of a soup out there of information. The internet hasn't made it easier or better. And, from our perspective, MAHC is absolutely necessary.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Long time no see.
Yeah, good to
Been
see you.
seeing
I'll
you
see you at the
since like
Western. See you
2020,
all
I
at the
think.
Western if you're there. You're all
Yeah.
invited to the concert.
Oh yeah, I'll be there for sure.
So I have a comment for you. This is Brian Stovall with Icon Leisure.
Hi, Brian.
Hi. Thanks for inviting me. My microphone is not working real well, so I'm sorry, not my mic, my camera thing's not working very well. So you'll have to just bear with me on that. But I just wanted to bring up the attention of I work with several people that are involved in the MAC and have been for a while. I was involved in the water park industry in the 80s, 90s through the early 2000s, and then I rebelled and went off and played in the music industry. But since then, I've come back and I've been focused. While we're still working and still have a lot of friends with water parks, it's amazing this industry how closely bonds develop and how long they are and how lasting they are. But we've been focusing on maybe we can call them alternative. I think somebody mentioned forgot the title. I think it was Michael that mentioned the different kinds of things that are coming about, whether they're lagoons or surf lagoons or various other entities. And we've been kind of focusing on those because it's a bit of the Wild West, or it has been over the last 5 or 6 years. And without taking up too much of anyone's time, I'll tell you that Dewey and I have been working together on a few things. I'm participating on the water reclamation ad hoc committee that he's overseeing, but we took the MAC to a state that was considering putting an artificial swimming lagoon in, and they were trying to conform the artificial artificial swimming lagoon to the National Pool and Spa codes, which doesn't need to happen from a health safety standpoint because the bather load versus the volume of water isn't there. The CDC has done done their homework on the swim zones of these artificial lagoons and things like that to maintain the proper chemistry. But to an earlier point, there's so many different codes out there and so many different states and so many jurisdictions look at so many different things and consider so many different things that the CMAC was actually our touchstone in that regard. And we referenced it with the state level and ended up getting the code variants to that particular development. Now, it's not for the entire state, but it did set precedent. But we were able to work through with Dewey and then with Joe over at CDC and work through the developers meetings and we actually got some things done. So in that regard, I just wanted to report back that it is alive and well. It is making an impact. This is as recently as maybe 18 months ago, maybe 12 months, yeah, probably 18 months ago. So in that regard, I really appreciate it. And, you know, I see a few faces that I knew back in the day. Rick, you're one of them. But I'm happy to be back, and I hope to be more involved, and we'll continue to move forward. We're looking at water parks as well as, you know, the new technology that's coming out. But I appreciate CMAC and what it's done, what it continues to do, and I'll certainly help to do my part to advocate for it and to support it.
Fantastic, Brian. Thank you for that. We love having the testimony of how it's actually working. I don't think anybody's aware of how much Dewey actually does. I think that he's got a lot on his plate, and supporting him is so important. Is there anybody else that wanted to have a comment or a question? No.
Michelle, I'll step in. I think for those, yeah. So for those who don't know, I'm Steve Barnes with Aquastar. We make drain covers. I've been in the industry since 1984, before when all of these standards were voluntary. And I've always been very focused on where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, on the technical standards with drain covers, with variable speed pumps, circulation. That's always been my focus, primarily in the residential side, into the hotel, motel, the small stuff, residential pools in a public setting. That's been my world for 42 years. And I'm a huge, we support the vote on the code as a company. Obviously, I'm in the middle and have been in the trade association since 1984. I would like to think we've done some good things there. I can say that the current organization, other than some old folks like me, is not the one that was around 15 years ago, for sure. So just in background, what I'm saying is where the rubber meets the road, clarity from a manufacturing, education, success. It's a lot easier with products that can be discreetly tested and built and all of that. The one thing that I focus on the ANSI standards because that's what's impacting the mechanical world I live in. The thing I really like them is when the ANSI process is honored and used appropriately, and that's not always the case. Dewey and I have spent a lot of time together in the last couple of days because we're working on the drain cover standard is in revision. And we have 21 members on that committee. Manufacturers can't be more than a third. That's something that I was adamant about within the new structure. So I think that is an absolute game changer, and hope that and continue to use the knowledge that is coming out of the MAC to support future things. It was a battle on the lagoons to get the designated swimming area into the ISPSC because there was people who had, as Tom accurately pointed out, they have shareholders they need to report to, and those things don't always align. That's why I'm a huge believer in the process of the ANSI standard to make sure we have balance. On the drain cover standard, we have 5 AHJs. We have the the foundations for the drowning prevention. Of course, we have manufacturers and designers and all of that. That is the model I believe in. And I give that setup to degree where the ANSI standards, codes, things like the NSF 50 standard, they all must be maintained where they have that job covered to the satisfaction of our experts. If we could support globally the adoption of one line, Michael mentioned PHTA2, which is the operation and maintenance, that happened because of that conversation he and I had. He's like, take it and run. And I was like, okay, I didn't know any better. I didn't even know there was a water quality standard at the PHTA. And I was the technical committee chair supposed to approve it since 2005 through 2023. There was a lot of unhappy people when that came out of the commercial council because we saw a need. We went directly to the board of directors and that standard came about. And I think it caught a lot of people off guard. It wasn't till it was approved that I found out there was such a thing as PHTA 11. And I'm not throwing shade or trying to be controversial. I'm just calling strikes and balls here. Now we are working together. I think collectively there's a lot of crossover on this call and then the CMAHC. My ask to consider would be where we have solid codes and standards that all of us can reference, it becomes a one line for adoption. The content of the Model Aquatic Health Code is awesome, but where different jurisdictions are adopting and most importantly modifying, it makes it so hard. And because of the VGB stuff, I deal with it day in and day out. So in the moving the water, so it touches all aspects of these pools. It makes it extremely difficult to support what I believe is absolutely a common goal, objective, and shared science, but different interpretations. I'm a believer in the ANSI standard process when run correctly and held accountable, and then that makes it easier to deliver. And where I'll land on this is if we could move to that support, it sort of defuses the perception and in some cases reality of the interorganization competition. I mean, we all as manufacturers work together. There's 7 of us on the drain cover. I'm of the opinion if we manufacturers that are at each other in the marketplace can work together for public safety, so can the organizations. And I say that with no apologies whatsoever. So if we could support what's working, put in code changes, standard changes where needed, then I think that'll tone that stuff down. Now we can focus. The PHTA has a new, it's a continuation of the foundation's research and grants program that is in the process of being standed up right now. There's going to be funding available for researching on the cold plunge. That's the big thing that's impacting all levels of our industry, from residential to clubs and all of that. And no one seems to have a clear answer, but we know how to get there. So where we can work, and clearly Kevin Post is in the middle. He's on both boards. He's the co-chair of the joint. I know where his heart's at. I think others may see where mine's at. We just need to find the common ground where we have settled stuff. Let's advocate for the easy adoption. We have the science that needs to be supported where we have industry resources and funding. And I think there's a long-term goal or a long-term relationship, certainly between the PHTA and the CMAHC, but the CMAHC goes in so many areas that'll never be the PHTA. The surf lagoons and all, it's too far out of our wheelhouse. So we need to support funding and advocacy and probably the water quality side of those venues that are never going to be a PHTA thing. So this is the CDC is the glue, the CMAHC is the much bigger entity that encompasses PHTA, and this organization, that organization is a big part of the aquatics world, but not all of it. And then my final thing is I so want, and I advocate without revealing private conversations with me and leadership at the PHTA, I want the World Aquatic Health Conference back the way it used to be.
I agree with you completely on that. Um, Michael, is there any, because I think you're on the right track. I know that there's conversations with PHTA on the CMAC board is having conversations with PHTA on partnering. I just don't know if any details can be laid out at this time or if it's just too early.
I think I mean, we don't have all the details, but
Yeah.
you're right, Steve. This is the basis for the discussion with PHTA right now, and that how can we align differently to try and minimize having to have a CMAC cold plunge and a PHTA cold plunge, and how do we bring the scientific environmental health identifying issues, getting guidance for that then can be turned into into code, ANSI code language and everything. And so that's we're kind of in it right now. So I actually don't have details except to say that's what we're talking about, is kind of what you've brought up here to try and make this a more harmonized type of construction of different wording and that sort of thing.
And I don't think there's been an environmental health leaders meeting at all the way that it used to be back in the day when we used to have 100 people there. And Susan, I don't know if Susan's still on the call, but she used to bring 100 people to meet.
And that was 100 environmental health leaders.
Yes.
It was around 600 total attendance.
Yes.
With scientific presentations, and that drove a lot of thinking about,
Yes.
oh, we could do that. And some of the things in the MAC were driven by people talking about, that's where the surf pools first started there, the discussion of them and everything. So people knew, if I have a new venue that I need to really work on, I better get to the WAC and talk to people about it and start the movement sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Michelle, we are doing environmental health leaders meeting. In fact, there'll be one at AOAP in just a couple of weeks.
But it's not at the same level as it was at the World Aquatic Health
No,
Conference.
no, not at all. The audience is different.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So Steve, I hope, Steve, that kind of addresses that.
Yeah.
Yes, we agree. We need to be talking about how that streamlines, and obviously ANSI has a worldwide acceptance level that is worth something, for sure.
Well, I'm the tactical guy, obviously, kind of where anything I can do to help. Kevin knows that. I just say the word, and
Kevin's Kevin's obviously he's on both boards, so he's talked. We've had initial meetings, and we're just going back over kind of what would that look like, and how do we move forward? What's the first step to basically build trust and that sort of thing. So.
In my whole role, I've always been loyal to, I report to organizations I'm willing to join and believe in. On the ANSI side of it here is, I've always followed what is the direction of the board. I'm a volunteer resource, and I don't always I've never agreed 100% with any organization I've worked for or with, but the one thing, so long as it's achieving the goal, I give it my all. And so when we have that alignment, whenever that direction is, certainly my role as the ANSI standards process chair and what I do in that technical side of the house, I will do everything I can to expedite executing wherever this goes. I'm really pleased to hear that.
And we greatly appreciate that. So as we move forward, kind of talking to PHT, I just wanted to say to the group, that's one aspect of sustainability, but not enough. And so we need to be multi-partnered, multi-sponsored to be able to make this work the way that it needs to.
And I'll be following up with everyone that registered for this event. I would love to just have a side conversation with you, just to see if there's ways that we can partner together that make sense. Again, I know everybody's different on what they can and cannot do, so I want to make sure I have those individual conversations with people to be able to say, and I might even see you at the Western show next week or at the Southwest show right after that. Ways that we can just have a conversation about it would be great, because I feel like this is so important, and I have the same level of passion that I believe Tom and Michael and Susan and everybody on the team has, and I just think it's important that this is sustainable, and we're able to keep this going because it's needed in this industry. But thanks, Steve, for that. I really appreciate you saying that.
You bet. And wearing my other hat that I wear less often than that one, Aquastar, it will continue to be here to support this organization.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Does anybody else have anything? I know we're about 15 minutes over at this point, but I appreciate those who've stayed on. Anybody else have anything to comment or feedback, questions? Okay, well, we're gonna let you guys go for today. Again, thank you so much for coming. I will send everybody an access to the recording, and also I'm going to be following up with all of you via email and hopefully in person when I see people next week, and we'll move forward and see how we can work together as a team on this. I'm looking forward to it. So thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
you.
Jim.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
And thanks, Jim Squared.
Thank you.
Great job.
Go
Nice to
find
meet
me.
you.
The Western.
Yes, see you, Terry.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Brian. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Dewey. See you later.
Thanks, Brian.
So Kevin, looks like Kevin's still on, but I'll follow up with you guys after the fact. Thank you for this. I appreciate it. And I think it was good. And I'm going to take clips of this presentation that we can multi-purpose for other things if you'd like. I think that would be great. And so I'll do that for you. I'll cut them up and send them over to Betsy and other folks so we can post them out and get more there. So I hope that, we'll do it.
Okay.
I know Betsy would love to have some of the clips.
Oh yeah, I'll do that for you guys. Thanks,
Okay.
Michael. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
I'll
y'all.
follow up. I'm gonna send everybody a personal email that attended, and I'll be able to see what we can do for moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Okay, see you guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye-bye.